Tell me about a time you managed expectations. This is a common behavioral interview question for software developers, backend developers, full-stack developers, senior developers, and team leads. Interviewers ask this question to understand how you communicate realistic timelines, how you handle scope changes, how you explain technical complexity, how you avoid overpromising, how you keep stakeholders informed, how you balance speed, quality, and business needs, how you prevent last-minute surprises. This question is especially important for Java developers, backend developers, Spring Boot developers, full-stack developers, senior software developers, team leads, agile teams, product-focused teams. The best way to answer this question is by using the STAR method. STAR means S, situation, explain the background. T, task, explain your responsibility. A, action, explain what you personally did. R, result, explain the final outcome. A good interview answer usually spends 10% situation, 10% task, 60% action, 20% result. The most important part is the action section, because interviewers want to understand how you communicated clearly, set realistic expectations, and help stakeholders make informed decisions. Question: tell me about a time you managed expectations. Example 1. Managing expectations for a customer search API situation. In one sprint, the product owner wanted a customer search API that could search across many fields and return all matching records immediately. From the business perspective, this sounded simple and convenient. However, the data volume was large, and returning all records at once could create performance issues. Task: I was responsible for designing the backend API and managing expectations around what could be delivered safely in the first release. Action: I first listened to the product owner's goal. They wanted users to find customer records quickly and avoid missing important results. Then, I explained the technical reality in simple terms. If the API returned thousands of records at once, the page could load slowly, the database could experience heavy load, the browser could become less responsive, peak traffic could affect other users. QA testing would need more performance validation. Instead of saying no, I proposed a realistic first version. The first version would include key search filters, pagination, maximum page size, sorting, total record count, empty result handling, validation errors. I also explained that advanced filters could be added later if users needed them. I showed a sample request and response, so the product owner could see how the feature would still meet the business need. Result: the product owner understood the trade-off and agreed to the paginated design. The team delivered the API within the sprint. The feature met the business need while avoiding unnecessary performance risk. Why this answer works? This answer is strong because it shows expectation management, business goal understanding, API design, performance awareness, practical alternative, stakeholder alignment. Example 2. Managing expectations around sprint scope situation. During one sprint, the business team requested extra dashboard features after development had already started. The new requests included export functionality, advanced filters, and a detailed drill-down page. The team had already committed to delivering the core dashboard in the current sprint. Task: I needed to help manage expectations so the team could protect the sprint goal without ignoring the business need. Action: I reviewed the requested changes and identified their impact. The additional work affected backend API changes, database queries, front-end changes, QA test scenarios, regression testing, sprint timeline, release confidence. I explained to the product owner that the extra features were valuable, but adding all of them mid-sprint would increase the risk of incomplete or poorly tested work. Then I proposed a phased approach. The current sprint would deliver dashboard summary cards, basic filters, role-based visibility, backend API, validation, QA-tested core flow. The next sprint could include export functionality, advanced filters, drill-down page. I also updated the story acceptance criteria so everyone understood what was included in the current sprint. Result: the product owner agreed to split the scope. The team delivered the core dashboard on time. The remaining features were planned properly instead of being rushed. Why this answer works? This answer is good because it shows scope management, agile communication, prioritization, realistic delivery planning, product owner alignment, protecting quality. Example 3. Managing expectations during a production issue situation. In one sprint, I was working on a planned feature when a production issue was reported. The issue affected report totals for certain date ranges and had business impact. The product owner still wanted the planned feature completed in the same sprint. Task: I needed to manage expectations around priority, capacity, and delivery timeline. Action: I communicated early that the production issue required immediate attention because it affected real users and business reporting accuracy. I explained the trade-off clearly. The team could either continue the planned feature as originally scheduled. Check. Prioritize the production issue and adjust the sprint scope. Check. Ask another developer to help with the planned feature. Check. Move part of the planned feature to the next sprint. I explained the impact of each option. I also provided a mitigation plan. Check. Investigate the production issue immediately. Check. Provide regular status updates. Check. Fix and test the issue. Check. Add regression tests. Check. Reassess remaining sprint capacity. Adjust scope transparently. I avoided overpromising that both the production issue and the planned feature would be completed without impact. Result: the product owner agreed to prioritize the production issue. We fixed the report calculation problem and added regression tests. The planned feature was delayed, but stakeholders understood the reason and trusted the decision. Why this answer works? This answer is strong because it shows check production ownership, priority management, realistic communication, stakeholder trust, no overpromising, quality first thinking. Example 4. Managing expectations for a complex report feature situation. In one project, the product owner requested a report feature that initially looked like a simple data display. After reviewing the requirement, I found hidden complexity around calculations, date ranges, time zone handling, data volume, and export behavior. I needed to manage expectations before the team committed to an unrealistic timeline. Action: I reviewed the requirement and identified the complexity. The complex areas included C. Calculation rules, cloak, inclusive and exclusive date ranges, business time zone, records near midnight, large data volume, database query performance, export file generation, QA test data, report accuracy validation. I explained to the product owner that the feature was not only a UI change, the backend needed accurate calculation logic, edge case handling, and enough validation with business data. I proposed splitting the work. The first release would include C. Backend calculation API, basic UI report display, date range support, core validation, QA verification with sample data. A later release would include export functionality, advanced filters, formatting enhancements, additional report columns. Result: the product owner agreed to split the work into smaller stories. The team made a realistic sprint commitment. The first version was delivered with better quality, and the remaining features were planned separately. Why this answer works? This answer is good because it shows identifying hidden complexity, timeline expectation management, story splitting, business communication, delivery planning, reducing sprint risk. Example 5. Managing expectations with QA testing time situation. In one release, development work for a feature was completed close to the end of the sprint. The business team wanted the feature released quickly, but QA had not completed regression testing. The feature touched a shared validation component used by multiple APIs. Task: I needed to manage expectations around release readiness and explain why focused testing was still necessary. Action: I explained that the code was complete. but release readiness also depended on QA verification. I clarified that the change touched shared logic, so it could affect more than the new feature. I explained the risk in simple terms. If we change a shared rule, every feature using that rule may be affected, so we need to test the related flows before releasing. I worked with QA to create a focused regression checklist. The checklist included original feature happy path, validation failure scenarios, older APIs using the same validator, role-based access, error response format, edge cases, smoke testing. I communicated to stakeholders that the release could proceed after this focused validation, instead of skipping testing completely. Result: stakeholders agreed to allow time for focused regression testing. QA found one issue in an older API before production. We fixed it, and the release went out safely. Why this answer works? This answer is strong because it shows managing release expectations, QA collaboration, shared component awareness, quality communication, risk-based testing, production safety. Example 6. Managing expectations for external dependency situation. In one project, our Spring Boot service depended on an API from another internal team. The product owner expected our feature to be fully tested by the end of the sprint. However, the downstream API was not yet available in the QA environment. Task: I needed to manage expectations around what could be completed and what depended on the other team. Action: I confirmed the status with the downstream team first. Then I clearly separated the work into unblocked and blocked areas. Unblocked work included client implementation, request mapping, response mapping, timeout handling, error handling, mock-based testing, unit tests. Blocked work included across real integration testing, across QA end-to-end testing, across final environment validation, across downstream error response testing. I communicated this to the product owner, Scrum Master, QA, and developers. I also proposed mitigation steps. Use mock responses temporarily. Confirm the API contract. Prepare integration tests in advance. Track dependency daily. Schedule testing as soon as endpoint became available. Result: stakeholders understood that development was progressing, but final testing depended on the downstream API. The team avoided confusion about the delay. When the endpoint became available, testing was completed quickly because the preparation was already done. Why this answer works? This answer is good because it shows dependency expectation management, clear status communication, mitigation planning, cross-team coordination, realistic delivery updates, avoiding surprises. Example 7. Managing expectations for refactoring work situation. In one code review, a feature worked functionally, but a senior developer pointed out that the implementation duplicated validation logic already used in another service. The product owner expected the story to be completed soon because the visible functionality worked. Task: I needed to explain why the story needed additional time for a small refactor before merging. Action: I explained that the feature worked from a user perspective, but the implementation could create maintainability issues if merged as is. I explained the risk. Check duplicate validation logic. Check inconsistent behavior in future changes. Check more regression testing later. Check higher chance of defects. Check harder code maintenance. I proposed a focused refactor instead of a large rewrite. The plan was CAPS move common validation into a shared validator. Keep service-specific rules separate. Add unit tests. Run regression tests. Update the pull request description. I also explained that this short delay would reduce future rework and make future changes safer. Result: the product owner understood the reason for the extra work. The refactor was completed, the pull request was approved, and future validation changes became easier. Why this answer works? This answer is strong because it shows check explaining invisible technical work, managing non-technical expectations, technical debt awareness, maintainability focus, code quality ownership, practical scope control. Example 8. Managing expectations during data migration situation. In one release, we had to migrate customer records from an old data model to a new one. The migration script was ready, and stakeholders expected the production migration to proceed. However, a test migration revealed missing fields, duplicate records, and unclear status mappings. Task. I needed to manage expectations and explain that the migration should be delayed until the data issues were validated. Action. I gathered evidence from the test migration. I summarized total records processed, successful records, skipped records, duplicate records, missing required fields, unclear status mappings, records needing manual review. Then, I explained the risk in business terms. If we migrated without resolving these issues, incorrect or incomplete records could appear in the new system. I proposed a safer plan. Generate an error report, review unclear records with business users, confirm mapping roles, correct invalid records where possible, rerun the test migration, validate record counts, proceed only after business sign-off. I made it clear that the delay protected data quality and reduced production support risk. Result. Stakeholders agreed to postpone the migration until validation was complete. The business team helped confirm the mapping rules. The final migration was completed more safely with better confidence. Why this answer works? This answer is good because it shows: check data migration expectation management, check evidence-based communication, check business risk explanation, check validation planning, check stakeholder alignment, check data quality ownership. Best short answer version. If you need a short interview answer, you can say, in one sprint, the product owner wanted to add export functionality, advanced filters, and a drill-down page to a dashboard after development had already started. The team had originally committed to the core dashboard feature. I reviewed the impact and explained that adding all the new items in the same sprint would affect backend APIs, database queries, front-end work, QA testing, and release confidence. I made it clear that the features were valuable, but including everything immediately would increase delivery risk. Instead of simply saying no, I suggested a phased approach. The current sprint would deliver summary cards, basic filters, role-based visibility, backend API changes, and QA-tested core functionality. Export, advanced filters, and drill down would move to the next sprint. As a result, the product owner agreed to split the scope. The team delivered the core dashboard on time, and the remaining features were planned properly without rushing quality. Common mistakes to avoid. 1. Overpromising. Bad answer. I told them we could complete everything, even though it was tight. Better answer. I explained the trade-off and gave a realistic delivery plan. 2. Saying only, that is not possible. Bad answer. I told the product owner we could not do it. Better answer. I explained the impact and suggested a phased approach. 3. Waiting too long. Bad answer. I told stakeholders near the end of the sprint. Better answer. I raised the expectation gap as soon as I saw the risk. 4. Using too much technical detail. Bad answer. I explained every code-level reason why it was hard. Better answer. I explained the impact on timeline, testing, quality, and user experience. 5. Not giving options. Bad answer. I said the timeline would slip. Better answer. I provided options. Reduce scope, split the story, or move lower priority items to the next sprint. Best practices for answering this question. Use the STAR method. Explain what expectation needed adjustment. Communicate early. Be honest but professional. Explain business impact. Avoid blaming others. Provide options. Recommend a path forward. Keep stakeholders updated. End with trust, alignment, or better delivery. What interviewers are looking for. Interviewers want to see whether you can check, set realistic expectations, communicate clearly with stakeholders, avoid overpromising, explain trade-offs, handle scope changes, manage delivery risk, protect quality, Keep trust during difficult conversations. For senior roles, they also want to see: check stakeholder management, check scope negotiation, check release readiness judgment, check priority management, check risk communication, check product thinking. Strong words to use in your answer. You can use words like clarified, aligned, communicated early, managed expectations, explained trade-offs, proposed options, recommended, adjusted scope, prioritized, reduced risk, protected quality, maintained trust. Example: I managed expectations by explaining the impact early, separating must-have scope from future enhancements, proposing options, and aligning stakeholders on a realistic delivery plan. Good expectation management topics you can use. Depending on your experience, you can talk about sprint scope change, delayed external dependency, production issue priority, hidden technical complexity, QA testing time, refactoring needed after review, data migration validation, performance issue before release, security requirement added late, unclear acceptance criteria, front-end back-end contract, change, deployment timing, API performance limitations, phased MVP delivery, release readiness. Final summary. Tell me about a time you managed expectations is an important interview question because software projects often involve changing scope, technical complexity, dependencies, and delivery pressure. The best answer should include what expectation existed, why it needed adjustment, who the stakeholders were, how you explained the reality, what options you provided, what recommendation you made, how the team aligned, what result improved. Good examples include: check, managing sprint scope, explaining production priority, handling external dependency, splitting complex report work, protecting QA testing time, explaining refactoring effort, delaying risky migration, setting realistic API performance expectations. The strongest answers show honesty, communication, planning, business understanding, quality ownership, and stakeholder trust.